back to the Maryville Forum podcast. I'm John Dykstra, joined by Anthony Crane. After a week hiatus here, as I was under the weather last week, and decided to make you wait an extra week for your football scoop. Hopefully, you still read all about it in the Maryville Forum last week. But this week, we come in for another week and have a lot of news to discuss. Anthony, I think we'll get started with the district assignments that were released last week. All of our 8-man teams and Maryville got put into their districts, which I know we're eagerly awaiting for each team. What was your biggest takeaway from seeing these districts released?
I think my biggest takeaway was District 1 and 2 are fairly simple. Down there you're going to have Archie Drexel, and then you're going to have North Shelby and Southwest Livingston, which was slightly disappointing. I still feel like those two teams are maybe the best in the state. So it's kind of a shame we won't see them in the semifinals or even in the state title game. And then you move further north to us. We'll start with like South Holt, Nottoway Holt. Their district is kind of top heavy with North Andrew and what they've done so far this year. Been a really good team, maybe the most impressive team so far. You throw in Oric, who, while they were a bit disappointing early on, seemed to be catching on a little bit, especially with Blake Buchanan at quarterback, who's a fantastic athlete. And then you have South Holt, Nottoway Holt, who's in third right now. Put my money on it. I think that's probably South Holt or North Andrew that comes out of that district. Then you move to District 4, and they may have the toughest of all the districts. You have Mound City in first right now. Then you have Stanberry, who's also undefeated. East Atchison, they've been on a bit of a hiatus themselves. They had the 2 weeks off because of the COVID thing. But since then, they bounced back against a decent Rockport team and just annihilated them. Their defense really showed up, which I liked this summer. What I saw held Joey Heron to 9 yards rushing. And before that, we saw, after week one, Kalen Merriweather wasn't very involved as a receiver. They moved him to running back, and he seems to be doing a lot better. And then you still have Rockport and then Worth County, who, while things have been rough there, they'll get Gladstone back here soon. They still have Andrew Alarcon. And right now, that's a fifth-place team in that district. And that's kind of scary. Then you have Albany, Northwest Nottoway, who has improved. I talked to Coach Sandiford of Mountain City, and he was really impressive with how they've improved from week one to now. And we'll get into that game later. But he talked about Northwest being kind of a handful for them. And then you have Platte Valley, who's having a rough go of it injury wise. So that District 4 is a tough district.
Yeah, then that's what I was going to point out. Platte Valley and Northwest Nottoway are probably looking at the 7 and 8 seed in that district. So that means you look at Mountain City and Stanberry in the first week of the playoffs. So that's certainly a tough draw if that's the way it ends up. And barring some wins and Albany maybe dropping a couple games that they probably shouldn't. That's likely the way that's going to end up. But then we flip over to Maryville's district, and that came out the other day. And I think if you're Maryville, you're pretty happy with how it looks. When it initially came out, Maryville was sitting in the 3 spot in the district. But last week, we might as well get into our first game. They defeated Cameron 27-7. Got behind early because that's what they do, is just give up that first touchdown, but then rattled off 27 unanswered to kind of coast out of Cameron with a win. And Cameron had been in that number 1 spot points-wise in the district, so they dropped down to 3. Maryville moves up to 2, and Richmond, who got a big win last week over Lafayette County, they're at that 1 spot right now. And that'll be a big deal because it's a 17 district, so the number 1 spot gets a bye. So I'm not saying, I mean, the number 7 team in that district isn't beating Maryville or Richmond anyway, but it's still nice to just have that extra week off, avoid any chances of injuries and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting to watch down the stretch. And also, Maryville's got a pretty tough slate of schedule coming up. So you also don't want Cameron to roll off a couple wins and pass you for that second spot as well, which is very possible given the schedule Maryville has coming up. And we'll dive into that right now with Maryville this week is going to play Odessa. All of a sudden, one of the 2 premier programs in the state decide on Wednesday, hey, we want to play a football game Friday. So Maryville's traveling down to Odessa to play the defending Class 3 state champions, winners of 20 straight games. Anthony, just for your perspective on this, as somebody who follows football, obviously, scheduling a game against this tough team on a Wednesday for Friday, just how tough do you think that's going to be for Maryville to prepare in 2 days or a day and a half or whatever it ended up being for one of the best teams in the state?
I don't love it. Normally, if it was a normal year, something happened with another team, you had a free week, I get it. From Maryville's perspective, though, you have to wonder if they are just using it to, again, try and mesh chemistry-wise with everything that's been going on. Maryville's been a little bit up and down this year. Blair Oak's a great team, and Maryville was just hit hard with those players being out, and then they bounced back. They win 2 in a row. They go to St. Pius, a team who we kind of thought going into it they would handle pretty well, and they lose that one. And like you said, Cameron Cameron, they fell behind last week. Ended up winning by 3 scores. You have Benton cancel, which is got to be a little disappointing if you're them because that is a very winnable game, as much as that hurts me to say.
You flip that one pretty good going from Benton to Odessa. It doesn't a home game against Benton to a road trip to Odessa. It doesn't get much more different than that.
No, and I think, but yeah, I kind of like it. I don't love their chances in the game, but I think it's good for them to continue to mesh as they move, as we get closer, because the season is quickly, we're quickly coming into districts with just a few games left, and it may be a good game to get, before you travel to Lincoln the following week to face another tough team. Then you're at Savannah and at Lafayette. So it's not going to get very easy for Maryville to close out the season. And I think the more tests you can give your team before you get to districts when things really matter, the better, especially with everything going on. The more football you can play this year, the better.
Yeah, not very easy for Maryville, that schedule. Not very easy for your local sports writer over here either. Can we get a home game and maybe put a few less miles on my card? But that's just not the way this year's schedule has worked out. So it'll be interesting for sure to go down to Odessa. I don't think anybody across the state outside of Maryville's own locker room will be picking them to win that game. It's a tough matchup, but I mean, there's a reason Matt Webb likes to schedule hard. It's the same reason he gives us every time that Blair Oaks game comes around to begin the season. He wants to see where his team's at, and with the MEC being a little down, other than St. Pius, obviously this year, it's a good chance in the middle of the season to kind of evaluate before the playoffs, see where you're at with Connor Drake, a new starting quarterback. He's been up and down a little bit. The one main goal is you want to come out of this healthy. It would be a shame if they scheduled the game late and something like that happened. But he's also been pretty disappointed with his offensive and defensive line. This will obviously be a huge test for those groups. So um, it'll be interesting to see if they can create any space in the running game or give Connor a little bit more of a chance to throw the ball back there. But either way, it's a fun matchup. Obviously, like I said before, two of the premier programs in the state perennially. So it'll be good to watch them play. They had a classic in Maryville the last time they met in the playoffs, where Maryville beat them when they were the number one seed. Um, Before Maryville ended up that year going down and losing to Trinity Catholic, who ended up winning the state championship with all their D1 kids they had recruited out of St. Louis there. So it's this is a pretty storied rivalry type game, even though they don't play every year, obviously. So as far as
Yeah.
finding a game on the fly, that's a fun one.
Yeah, and
But
kind of looking at it, there may only be maybe two tough games left for them on the schedule now that they've added Odessa. Normally I would think Savannah and Lafayette give you a good test, but those are two teams that have really kind of struggled this season. That being said, I guess it's hard to really judge any team.
Savannah's been quarantined a couple weeks there. I'm still very interested to see that Savannah team. Obviously, Maryville's history against them, you would lean towards Maryville, but I think Savannah is a good team. When I've talked to other people about how the MEC is going to shake out, like I talked to people in Cameron last week about that, and the real wild card is Savannah because they've had so many. They've had such a weird season, and they've had guys out, and they've been good since they've been back. It's against some weaker competition. They beat St. Joe Central last week. I know 11-0 in a weird game, but they're definitely a team that will be interesting going down there. I do think Lafayette is down, and I think Maryville should win that game. But these next 3 weeks against Odessa, and then against Lincoln Prep, and then against Savannah, there's some really good games and should be interesting. But those aren't the only good games on the slate this week. As we turn back to 8-man again here, we've got a bunch of interesting games, and we'll start with breaking down last week. Northwest Nottoway had the trip you don't want to have, where you got to go to Mound City, number one team in the state, and despite the final score being pretty lopsided, 60-14, they were in it for a half to 3/4 of that game. They were within striking distance, and they kind of got out of hand at the end. You alluded to it a little bit earlier, but what have you heard from maybe some folks in Mound City of what they thought about the Muskets this year?
There aren't many people in Mountain City that would love to speak to me, but I did happen on my Sunday evening trip to Walmart run into Coach Sanderford, funny enough, and him and I spent a little bit too much time probably talking about football. But he talked about
the dairy section. I get how you are.
I think we were in the pasta aisle actually.
There you go.
But he alluded to the fact that he was really impressed with their improvement from week one to their matchup last week. I don't know. Like I said, Mount City's been a little down this year, but still, it's a really good team. And for Coach Calfee and the Muskets to hang with that team, like you said, through the first half into the third quarter was really impressive. And I think we knew kind of coming in this year that while the Northwest Nottoway would be improved, it may not be this season that the wins come. But that program seems to be heading in the right direction. And I think you saw a sign of that last week against the Panthers, who right now are the number one team in 8-man. And it's a good sign because as we'll talk about their upcoming games, but now the Muskets have a chance to rattle off some wins before they head into districts.
Yeah, and I talked to Coach Coffey about that Mound City game too, and he saw the same thing. He said even though the wins haven't been there, he loves his team's attitude. They don't have any quit to him. He said, and even when they make mistakes, they bounce back well. And he's really liked how the defense has performed, even though giving up 60 points obviously isn't what you want. But there was a pick six in there. There was a kick return for a touchdown. There was a couple other short fields. So he's liked the way his defense has performed. And as the schedule lightens up a little bit here, it should provide an opportunity for that defense to even do a little more. And this week they travel to DeKalb to face a winless DeKalb team, and then the following week they have LeBlanc at LeBlanc. So excuse me, this week that game is in Hopkins. It's actually homecoming for North Nottoway. So a little festivities going on there and an exciting game. So these next 2 weeks with two opponents that are certainly winnable games for the Muskets. What do you want to see out of Northwest Nottoway and how they perform in these two?
Um, you know, for Northwest Nottoway, they've spent the last handful of years being that team that gets beat up on. That kind of they're in DeKalb's position, and while DeKalb has a great coach, the talent just isn't there right now. A lot of young players. I think this is a good opportunity for Northwest to kind of flex their muscle a little bit. This is a game they should win easily to prove to people that they are improved and that they are someone that this year and in the future won't be the same old Northwest Nottoway that we're used to.
And then Platte Valley last week, again another tough game for them. They're so beat up right now with the injuries, but they lost to a hungry Albany team who doesn't have a great record, but it's probably one of those teams out there you'd say that are better than their record indicates. But they fell to them last week. What for Platte Valley now going into a really tough game with at Ludlow with Southwest Livingston. I'm assuming you're not picking them to win that game, but what are the keys to what do they need to do other than just try to stay healthy?
Hope that West Hughes bangs up his hand again. Um, no, but for Platte Valley, things were looking great coming into the season. And it's just, injury after injury, things have gotten rough. What they need to focus on now, I think, and what Coach Revelin, I think, may agree with, is that now is the time for these young kids that they have to just improve little by little, to get that experience. You want to try and get as much of these games in as possible. You don't want to go to Ludlow and for that game to be over at halftime. So you got to focus on what you're good at. They, with Ferry Kid at quarterback, they have a pretty good run game, and so you want to lean on that. Lean on him. Lean on Gaten Austin. As far as the halfbacks, I don't know. I haven't seen them in a few weeks. I don't know what the health-wise is with Rivera or not. If he's back, that helps them a lot. I know he was out for a few weeks with concussion. I don't know if he's over that yet. But if he's back, they get
week as well. So
yeah.
I think it's kind of a week-to-week thing with him. So we hope that he gets back and gets feeling well. But
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to lean on that run game, kind of drag this one out, muddy it up a little bit if you can. I don't think there's any chance you beat Southwest, but it's a good chance to, if you can pull a Northwest against Mountain City, be in that game for 2 to 3, even 4 quarters. I think that's what you want to see from Platte Valley now and throughout the season, because with the injuries, you got to start looking to 2021 a little bit. and you want to get these guys some experience, some playing time, and something that they can build on in the future.
Yeah, they. You also want to look to the rest of this year, and while we're kind of down on their chances to beat Southwest Livingston, if you get Rivera back, you look at those next 2 weeks. They're at DeKalb, which, as we talked about with Northwest, is a winnable game for anybody. And then they're against Stewartsville, who was a team that's maybe better than they have been in years past, but is kind of with Platte Valley and Northwest Nottoway as a team that's growing but isn't to their ceiling yet. So those are two winnable games following this trip to Ludlow. So if you can make it through this still healthy and maybe get Rivera back or some of your other guys back, then all of a sudden it gets interesting the next 2 weeks that you can rattle off maybe a couple wins and feel a little better about the season.
Yeah, you just got to feel bad for them because that was before all this. They were a 4 to 5 win team, and now, the wheels just kind of falling off for them, and it's
now
tough.
We're looking at 3 probably best case scenario if you can sweep that DeKalb and Stewartsville week, because then they end the year with East Action, and that's another tough game. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see moving forward. But a team that had maybe the toughest week, obviously they didn't get blown out, but a little let down in a game they thought they should win is Worth County going and falling to a rival in King City. That close game, it was a 2-point loss, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
6.
44-50. I was mistaken. So just seeing what you saw from that game, I know King City's another team that's probably a little better than their record indicates because they got a quarterback back this week. But what do you see from both those teams and how Worth County's kind of adjusted to being down a couple guys and just kind of waiting for Gladstone to get back at quarterback right now?
What I saw from Worth County was resilience. If you go back to that opening week, I think we talked a little bit that following week as we reviewed that it looked like that was a Worth County team that kind of quit when they got down against Worth County. And there was no quit in them on Friday night. They would get down and they'd come right back. With King City, I like them coming in the year to be a tough team in the GRC because of Landon Wells and Parker Muff. And Landon Wells was fantastic in that game. He threw some passes that not a lot of 8-man guys can throw. And but what you saw from Worth County was some of that fire, some of that, they're still Worth County, and they weren't going to quit. And a lot of that was Andrew Alarcon. He was fantastic in that game. He, right now, is that offense. And until Gladstone gets back, that's not going to change. They have another tough matchup this week and basically the rest of the season. So we're going to see if they can keep building on that. I know a bit of the attitude around Worth County is, they're feeling a little down because if there's no team that's had worse luck maybe this year than the Tigers. Thursday night they found out that they were going to be without 4 to 6 players, and a lot of that was their offensive line. And you saw that in the game. While they still ran the ball well, I think I counted 7 muff snaps. One that sticks out in my mind was a 3rd and short. Ball went way over the quarterback's head. They lost like 20 yards. And things like that, if you can improve on that, if those things don't happen, that's probably a win for Worth County. And we're still singing their praises about how they've, recovered from such an awful start to the year. So that gives me hope that moving forward, that team with their quarterback back, because right now they're one-dimensional. They get in the 3rd and long, they go the Wildcat with Alarcon, and you kind of knew what was coming. They had completed a couple, I think it was 2 long passes on the night, uh, and that was about it. So I think with Gladstone back, that gives them another dimension. And like I said, they may enjoy being where they're at right now in their district, kind of middle of the pack. Because I think that's all they can ask for right now. But they still have to fight off some of those tough teams. But I think if Gladstone get back, they can get back to being two-dimensional, kind of work on that defense some more. Because again, Gladstone was one of their defensive backs, so he'll help there as well. Because that's what really hurt them on Friday night. Parker Muff was great in the first half. He wasn't there in the second. They kind of shut down the Mooney kid. Held him to short gains. But in the end, Landon Wells just kind of picked them apart. So I think that while when we first started this season, things were looking down on Worth County. I kind of like them to maybe not be what they were this offseason as the number 1 team in the state, but still a team that could do some damage this postseason.
Yeah, my takeaway from the early portions of the Tigers season here is don't, under any circumstances, put your quarterback in preseason tackling drills. It's probably not going to end well for you, and it might derail your whole season. So that would be my advice going forward for all coaches out there. But what do I know? Our final team of the night.
I think you could sense some frustration from Healy too. He's not a guy that gets real emotional, and I think you saw some of that on Friday night. And I don't know. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. I can't. Depends on what kind of frustration you're looking at. But either way, I think he's done a good job with what he's been handed this season.
Our final game is kind of kicked off the DeKalb tour of Nottoway County here. They had to play South Holt, Nottoway Holt last week, and it did not go well for DeKalb. I know there's only so much you can take away from a DeKalb game against a team that's a top 5 or a top 10 team in the Spartans. But now, since the Spartans had that kind of rough start to the season, or how have you seen them the last few weeks kind of bounce back from that, and what do you like about? I know you're still pretty high on the Spartans, so what do you like about what you've seen from them?
I like that they did what they had to do in those 2 games. They showed a little more creativeness in that Platte Valley game, and you gotta like to see that. One thing I will mention from that loss against Southwest, the last couple weeks, I've been blessed enough to get some coaches' film. Some guys that were nice enough to share that with me, including Coach Magruder at Southwest, which allowed me to watch them against Mount City, but also watch that South Holt game. And what I saw in that was a South Holt team that is close. Offensively, I was really impressed with what they did against Southwest. They moved the ball well. From my understanding, it was people made it sound like they were physically outmatched, and that's not what I saw in that game. What I saw in that game was kind of what we've seen from the Spartans the last few years, and that their defense is it's not great. And in that game, they kind of refused to change their game plan. And that allowed Chase Neptune to just do whatever he wanted. They were running a lot of man press, and that is not something you want to do against that team. So that's going to be something I'm going to look to because the South Holt doesn't. We got the Mountain City game coming up. Other than that, their schedule is fairly soft until they get to districts. So I want to see that defense improve some. And I know we've been saying that for years now because that's really the only thing that's been holding them back with Quinlan. And then a few years ago, you had Chase Ottman and guys like that. It was always the defense holding them back. And when they get to districts, that can't be the weakness again. And that's going to be up to Coach Peterson and his defensive coordinators to be a little better prepared against teams like that. And if you come into it and your game plan isn't working, you have to be able to change. And that's a sign of coaching. And I think Peterson's great about that on offense. I've seen him switch his plan in the middle of a game, but they have to be able to do that defensively too. And I think it'll help if you run into a team like Southwest, you can see what other teams did. You can see what Mountain City did against them to kind of slow them down as far as the air game. So hopefully they can learn from that. When I talked to him after the Platte Valley game, he basically said that they spent that week off they got because of COVID, kind of getting back to what they did well or what they do best. And you saw that against Platte Valley, and you saw that against DeKalb. They'll have another game where it may be over at halftime this week as they prepare for that big rivalry game here in a couple weeks against the Panthers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention this week with Stewartsville. I don't expect that to be a very close game, but the big one is the week after when Mound City comes to town for that Holt County rivalry. So we will talk a lot more previewing on the Spartans next week. But for now, let's wrap up and make some picks here. Odessa hosting Maryville. I will go first, and I believe for the first time all season, pick against the Spoop Hounds. Odessa is just a powerful team, and I think the Spoop Hounds can learn a lot from this game, but I don't think they'll be coming home with a victory. I see Odessa by probably a couple scores in this game. As I said before, the offensive and defensive lines just have to be better in this for Maryville to have any chance. And even if they do, Connor Drake probably has to be better in this. He's been good. He's managed the ship. He's had costly turnovers though in each game, and you can't give Odessa free possession. So he's going to have to take care of the ball better. They're going to have to feed Connor Weiss, who has been every time he gets the ball, he's busting 2 or 3 tackles, which it says a lot about Connor Weiss. He's a heck of a running back, but it also probably says a little bit about the offensive line that they're letting him get hit, and he has to do that to make 3 or 4 yards to carry. So this game, I don't see it going in the Spoop Hounds' favor, and I'm picking Odessa to defend their home turf and get the win on what has been a weird week for both teams with the late game scheduled.
Yeah.
Anthony, your turn on this one.
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten a Spoop Hound game right this year, if I'm correct. But I think I'm going to
let you pick them the Cameron week. You would have picked them last week. I'm confident in you.
Yeah. But I think the only thing that could be kind of leaning in the Spoop Hounds' direction may be the short week, and you have one of the best coaches in the state. So if you're going to play a team with a day and a half's notice, it's good to have a guy like that on your side. Like you said, it's going to be pretty tough to travel to Odessa and get a win there. So I think I'm going to go with you on this one and pick Odessa. Maybe a little reverse jinx there, and my streak continues.
Possibly. That is the thing, especially offensively. The Spoop Hounds are going to do what the Spoop Hounds do. It's not like you're game planning for how are we going to take advantage of this corner on the outside that's not very good. They don't care. They could have a bunch of 4'5" corners on the outside, and guess what? We're going to run the ball with Trey Houchin and Connor Weiss. It doesn't matter. So,
because if I've learned anything in my time covering football, it's that coaches are stubborn.
Yeah.
They don't like changing.
And I'll give Matt credit. When Ben Walker the last couple of years was developing, and he had Tate Ogletree, and he had Deion Metzger, and Caleb Kreisinger even early this year showed it, and he's shown it in the past too. They threw the ball a little bit more. But when you lose your starting quarterback week one and you're built on the run, they're going to run the ball, and they're going to try to do that this week. Let's see if the front five and the front six can hold up and give those running backs some lanes to run through. It'll be an interesting test, that's for sure. But moving to our 8-man games this week, we'll start out with Platte Valley and their trip to Southwest Livingston, and I'll give you the honors to go first on this one.
Southwest is probably they had the one loss, but I still think they're probably the most talented and one of the more well-coached teams in the state. And with everything going against Platte Valley, they don't really have much of a shot. And that may be putting it nicely. But it'd be good for them. Like I said, a lot of opportunities for these younger guys with the injuries to get some playing time and to see what an elite 8-man program looks like, and hopefully they can learn from it.
Yeah, depending who you talk to, Southwest Livingston maybe should have beat Mountain City a couple weeks ago. They might be the best team in the state, and even with the one loss. So that's a tough draw for Platte Valley. So, Southwest Livingston is going to win this, and hopefully Platte Valley can play into the second half, make it at least give the kids an opportunity to play a full game. But with the way Southwest Livingston can score the ball, I don't know if that's going to be the case. But now we'll move to DeKalb taking on Northwest Nottoway. Like I said, this is the homecoming game for North Nottoway at least. And facing a winless DeKalb team, they picked it pretty well if they want to have a party, and I think they're going to have a party. And I predict a big game for Carson Overhauser, big game for Michael Goff, who was a little quiet last week. And I think the Muskets roll in this one and keep DeKalb winless by 20 points. I think the final margin is going to be, and a nice win for Coach Coffey at home in Hopkins.
Yeah, speaking of Michael Goff, Coach Sanderford may have given him one of the best compliments you can get from a guy who coaches a program like that. When he talked about Northwest Nottoway, he talked about Michael Goff. Not so much on offense, but he was extremely impressed with him defensively, and thinks that he could, as he grows and as he gains experience, could end up being one of the best linebackers in the state. But this game, like most of our area games, I want to see Northwest put this one away early. I think, a running clock, an early ending to this game would be great for them. While I know these kids love playing 4 quarters of football, I think if they could do that, that would go a long ways for a team that probably hasn't experienced that in quite some time.
Over the last couple of years, they've experienced that happen to them a bunch. And I know you said 4 quarters of football is great. I bet they would really enjoy putting that shoe on the other foot and making somebody else deal with that. But, boy, you sure did learn a lot while you were picking out ramen noodles the other day. Kudos to you for just finding stories everywhere.
Oh, but, Coach Sanford still doesn't believe in the South teams either, so we'll.
I'm with Coach Sanford there.
I know.
Are we counting Southwest Livingston as a South team? Because I believe in Southwest Livingston.
Coach Dean at Drexel asked me if they were considered a South team because basically 36 Highway has supposedly been where 8-man ends and 8-man begins. And now Ludlow is just on the other side of that. But I think they're counted because they're in the 275. So I guess they're still considered a North team.
And because they've actually beat teams from the North, those other teams can't say that as often.
Here's my
And I'm
argument
not
with
I'm
it.
not trying to hate on Drexel or Archie. I haven't seen either of them play this year. I don't know how good they are. I'm just saying history would indicate that if in doubt, you probably go with the team up north because they have had just a much stronger track record. If you play in the GRC or the 275, traditionally you are better equipped to win some of those games, particularly if you play in the GRC, as
Appleton City
Danbury and Worth County and North Indies records.
Appleton City is still state champs if their quarterback doesn't get hurt. Do I believe that? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna say you said it with your chest. That's all that matters. You were loud and proud. So
you know what? I was really high on them last year. The quarterback got hurt, and then things kind of went downhill from there. But that was a really good team. And when I was visiting Appleton City, they showed some love to me because I was said such nice things about them last year. So
if
at
you
least they're
buy
at
Anthony
least they
Faye's
are
lunch,
read. Yeah,
he will
at
put
least
you in
they
the
are
top 10.
at least they are reading the Maryville Forum in Appleton City. So
There you go. Um, we got two more games before this podcast mercifully ends. So, but let's go. This one should be a quick one. Stewartsville and South Holt, Nottoway Holt. Drew Quinlan has a huge game, gets about 500 all-purpose yards, and the Spartans roll to an easy victory over the Cardinals.
500 may be a bit extreme, but
Um,
I don't think they'll play enough game for that to happen.
I've been called the South Holt Nottoway Holt hater before, so I'm trying to shake that. I'm predicting a big game here.
I have the messages to prove it that you don't like the Spartans. In fact,
Oh, the
you
Spartans.
you have already picked Mountain City next week to beat them.
I don't think I have technically, but that could very well happen. I will agree that that is a possibility.
We'll
And
see
I'm
7
not
days.
known as a Mound City lover either. Maybe it's just Holt County in general I'm against. As soon as you get past Maitland, I'm like, I'm done with that place. So
Oh, Oregon's such a great little town, though.
it truly is. It is. I'm sorry.
No,
I've been
yeah,
about 3 feet into it to the high school, and that's about it. But other than that, it looks great.
yeah. I will say that Coach Peterson may have said that he's going to start preparing for Mountain City, and that was after the Platte Valley game, that he may not even scout these teams.
Bulletin board material for the Cardinals. I hope they are listening.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't because I'm not a South Holt, Nottoway Holt hater. So I hope they don't sense Coach Peterson's disrespect. But
No.
nonetheless, that's some disrespect right
Yeah.
there.
The way that South Holt, the way their offense runs, it actually runs. It may not be as quick. I think it'll be more of a third quarter type of game, more of what happened against Platte Valley, because Stewartsville is proven, while they're not what you would say is a good team, they're decent enough to maybe hang around for a little bit. But yeah, South Holt's, Nottoway Holt's probably going to run away with this one at the end.
And we wrap up with the game that is probably the most likely for us to differ on. It's definitely, probably if you were putting point spreads on this game, I would say this is the closest one of the week. But it is Worth County going to Oric. Two teams that have been in the top 10-ish talk at times. Kind of on the edges there, but I don't know if we have an update on Aiden Gladstone yet, and if do you know if he's ready to play this week?
I think he's a week away.
So
unless
one
I
more
can,
week of him being out,
unless
the
I
team
can
rally together and get a tough win in a week without their leaders still, or one of their leaders, I say yes. I say Tigers win this game by 4 points. Throwing out a random. I think they get a couple more 2-point conversions. Andrew Alarcon, one of the best running backs in the state, punches it in a couple extra times. And Worth County makes just enough plays on defense to maintain a win here. And I've got the Tigers going into Orc and driving home with a victory.
I think you're right. While Orc is a talented team,
I really thought we were going to differ on that one.
I wouldn't bet on it if I were into that sort of thing. But I think it'd be a close game. I think Orc is Blake Buchanan, like I said earlier, is a fantastic player. They're both kind of in the same position, a team it's not a very big team. They have like 15 players or so, but of the 15, they're really talented. But this year they've been missing something. I can't put my finger on it. They just haven't been as good as I believe they should be or should have been. And so I agree with you. I think that Worth County has shown some real improvements. They'll have a week to practice with those kids that they weren't sure or had no idea we're going to play last week. So that offensive line should be better, a little better chemistry. And Andrew Alarcon, like you said, is fantastic. And I think if he can get them through another week, that'd be a team that you have to look out for. And I'm going to go with the Tigers as well.
Gotcha. And that'll wrap it up for this week's Maryville Forum podcast. Again, just to wrap up and go over one more time the games this week for those of you who might have kind of been tuning in and out and missed the full slate. Maryville travels to Odessa. Platte Valley travels to Southwest Livingston. DeKalb visits Northwest Nottoway. That game's in Hopkins. Stewartsville goes to Oregon for South Holt, Nottoway Holt, and Worth County will be traveling to Orc. And until next week, we thank you for joining us. Next week's a loaded slate. Probably my favorite, spoiler ahead, probably my favorite week of just competitive games up and down the schedule will be next week. So you're going to want to keep following and get ready for that week when I think me and Anthony will differ on a few more picks than we did this week. But until then, thanks for watching.